In today's event, we're also going to do a walkthrough through the new misinformation event. So, very quickly, I would like to introduce Mr. Ilya, who will be facilitating for us today. This program is being recorded, so just to let everybody know. And I just want to say a big thank you for joining us. Mr. Ilya will now be taking his workshop.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for making our time to join this webinar. I also want to commend the organizers of this webinar, as I believe that there is no better time for us to have this conversation about the trend of internet fraud and fake news in general, how it is impacting on us as people. Now, information we know is a critical tool for human interaction, as it serves the function of a major component of every man, which is to communicate and to relate with his environment, inform decision making, and to also guide the thought process, etc., etc. So it's now safe to say that a person is only as good as the quality of information available to him or her. Now, what exactly are we looking at? We are looking at information, we are looking at misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. These are three things that sometimes are used interchangeably. But then let's look at what's the difference between these three. There's quite a difference. First, misinformation. This has to do with the spreading and sharing of false information, sometimes not necessarily with the intention to do so. Perhaps it may be out of genuine concern, and then we find things that appeal to us and they sound true to us. For instance, like it's common with us, you see someone sends you a message on WhatsApp, and then without even thinking about it, you have shared it. It could be a scammer and all that. Now, that's misinformation. I'll give you a quick example. Sometimes in 2014, I got a call from home asking me to wake up. It was at midnight, and it was, the information was asking that I wake up, take salt water and bath with salt water as a way for me to immune myself against a new discovered virus called Ebola, at the time. And, not only myself, even people around me that I knew got the same message, either from parents at home or from a loved one, a friend, or somewhere. Some got calls, some got messages, and it went viral everywhere. Now, if for many people, if you ask them who gave that information, not many people can tell you how that information came about. But it was shared, out of genuine concern, for loved ones and all of that. Now, as a result of that, some people died, especially those who have underlying illnesses like hypertension, and some were hospitalized. Now, was it intended that anyone died? No, but it happened, and it was just something that was shared, with a genuine, concern. So, with misinformation, there's no intention to mislead. Now, disinformation, that's where you now have the spreading of false information with the intention to do so. It is deliberately shared for different reasons, whether personal, political, economical, or whatever, to drive an agenda. So you deliberately craft sometimes information that is not correct, and it is spread and it's shared. An instance to that would be, recently the Nigerian Air Force disclosed that an Alpha jet involved in the fight against insurgency in the Northeast was missing. They lost contact with that aircraft, whether it's as a result of technical hitches or as a result of the insurgents shooting it down. No one can really say at the time. So they said investigation was ongoing. But before investigation could even finish, the guys at the other side, Boko Haram, came out to claim responsibility for the attack, saying that they shot down the aircraft. Even doing that with the support of a video that they shared, that went viral as well. Now, after a close investigation, it was discovered that that video was false. It actually happened in 2012 and in Idlib, Syria. And that's where that incident happened, and not even in Nigeria. In fact, it was not even an Alpha jet; it was a helicopter. So that was a clear example of disinformation. It was a propaganda. It was attempted to cause disaffection, to make people to lose faith in their military and all of that. So different. You find that it is a critical tool used even in conflicts and all of that. Then third one, malinformation. With malinformation, you find that these are actual events, they are facts, but then sometimes are quoted out of context and then they are manipulated, to push a certain agenda, to portray a certain point, which may not necessarily be not correlate with the context if it was to be looked into, within the context. Another example for me would be, for instance, the IPOP, secession agenda. If you look at the emphasis that the IPOP is, laying on the issue of the civil war in the past, the history of the Igbo nation, and if you look at, the issue of the current economic, realities, unemployment among young people, and you also look at, the perceived marginalization of the Igbo nation in politics and the likes of it. You would find that these reasons appear to be very, very valid reasons for secession. But then, if you look very closely, not much emphasis, is laid on the other side of the story. So it's just a one direction story, and then it keeps hammering on that very thing, taking it out of context and capitalizing on it. Now, how has this misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation impacted, on our social interaction as countrymen, as a people? One, you will find that more and more we see polarization. Nigerians are now polarized along ethnic, ethno-religious, and political lines. You find disaffection among, people, no unity. You find hatred, and all of that. So these kinds of information has not helped, in fostering unity among, Nigerians, especially because politicians now take advantage of these things, and people are further divided along these lines. Secondly, stereotype. It promotes stereotype. An instance to this is you find that some weeks ago, I would say sometimes in January actually, the governor of Ondo State was said to have issued a quit notice to herdsmen in Ondo State. But if you look very closely at the statement, there was no mention of the word Fulani. But when the story eventually came out, what we saw was Ondo State Governor issues quit notice to Fulani herdsmen. Now, in the actual statement, there was no issue about whether Fulani or Tiv or Igbo or whoever. It just said herdsmen. And another part of that statement that was not captured was that there was a 7-day window for herdsmen who are still willing to carry out their business, in the state, to register with the appropriate authorities to avoid being clamped down upon. But not many people, talk about that. So you would see that this, by this, it gives an ethnic coloration to the whole conversation. Nobody is talking about the criminality perpetrated by herdsmen. Instead, we see Fulani herdsmen. Then, a few weeks after that, we also saw another issue. A non-state actor in Oyo State, Sunday Boho, he is called, came out and led some young people to some Fulani communities and carried out attacks. That generated a lot of tension in the polity. So that's a clear example of how these things can breed hatred and can breed disaffection, create chaos, create fear in the polity, and even lead to conflict and all of that. Now, other areas that we can also talk about is the issue of trust. There is a trust deficit because of this kind of misinformation. You find that there is no trust between the leaders and the led, between government and Nigerians, and that trust deficit keeps widening by the day. So these are some of the negative impacts. Then now, how do we detect information that is incorrect? One, you can do that by verifying the social media account sending you the message, if it is on social media. I know on Twitter, for instance, there is the blue mark that is usually on the account to show you whether the account is authentic or not. Also, you could also verify photos or videos, and while doing so, look out for location markers. Location markers could help. Maybe it could be a signpost, it could be license plate, it could be the language spoken in the footage, or if it's a video. And you could also use softwares. There are certain softwares that could help. For instance, Tinea.com is a software. You can upload pictures there. It will show you all the details about the picture, when it was first posted, who used it first, and all of those kind of information. Then also another way to check that misinformation is to look at the author's information. For instance, the person sending the message, is there any author's bio attached to it? Is there any imprint you could see on the information? Another way to check to verify information is to check the URL. If it is sent, for instance, from a website, you could check the URL. What does it end with? What's the domain name? Is it .com? Is it .ng? Is it .net? There are certain sites that are cloned, and so if you don't take time to check that, you could be misled, and before you know it, you are providing your information to fraudsters. Also, you also want to check, is it trustworthy? The post that you're seeing, the message that you are seeing, is it in tandem with what you know about the website or about the source? Is it consistent? So, and also you can also check other platforms. Are they also sharing the same thing? Is it the same thing? For instance, if it is news item, you can check sources, platforms that are known to be trustworthy. If you can find it there, then it's correct. If it's not, then you might want to drag it and delay it a bit. Now, finally, I would like to say that one of the reasons why fake news spread and has gotten more grounds is because of the lack and absence of transparency, for instance, in government parlance. So there is need to not let those vacuums exist, because once there's a vacuum, once people cannot find information, they will create it for themselves to satisfy their curiosity. So facts must be made available. Facts about things must be easy to get. It mustn't be make it available everywhere. Let people be aware. Let people be informed, properly informed. And then I believe doing that will help to check, the spread of fake news and misinformation and all of that. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your time. The webinar will continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayuba. That was very well put together, very enlightening. So, just a quick recap. Mr. Ayuba has spoken to issues of ethno-religious polarization and disunity fostered by misinformation, disinformation. There's also issues of stereotyping, which are some of the results of misinformation. Um, he's also advocated for governments to become more transparent in information sharing because a vacuum will be filled by whatever it is that is available. Thank you very much. We have two questions already sent by email, um, but there's also a question here from Obashegun to Mr. Ayuba. So we're going to let Mr. Ayuba take the Q&A for the next 5 minutes before we go to the walkthrough. Mr. Ayuba, please. Obashagun wants to know, how do you identify unverified websites that carry potential fake news?
Well, first of all, you like I mentioned earlier, you look at is that site, what are the other contents that are on that site? Can you really trust that site? Does it feed when you look at the stories logically? When you look at the information coming from that site, are they stories that you can say that are real? Um, like I highlighted, you can see that if there are pictures or if there are videos on that site, you can look at the location markers, and I believe that news or information sources develop integrity over time. If, for instance, you compare it with other stories from other platforms and you see that you really cannot hold on to it, then it's possible that it's fake. So you need to watch closely, and also, like I said, the domain name sometimes can help you to verify whether they are genuine sites or not. So first of all, understand whether your website is it what it claims. If it claims to be a government website, does it have the same domain name that other government websites have? For instance, .gov.ng is what is known to be for government websites in Nigeria. So if you see .net or .org, for a government website, for instance, then know that something is probably off. You should do a further check on that website. I think that's I don't know. That's the most I can attempt to answer that question. All right.
Okay, thank you very much. We got two other comments, which we've already shared with Mr. Yuba to the email. And both of them seemed to think that fake news has become a problem because it is something that government is emphasizing when they are criticized.
Yes. The truth is that fake news is not a given. Everybody in the government that is there and following the trend, especially with the evolution of social media, they know that fake news is not the same way interested. So you find people uh, just making up things and posting it online without information because they feel that they can do that. And really, you can do that from wherever you are. You can write it on social media or whatever. Now, the truth is, fake news exists because human beings, there are interests around it, either political, either personal, either economical, or whatever it is. Uh, for instance, I would say for some news outlets, the truth is that especially news outlets that are on clickbait, we call them the clickbait platform, where the see stories and the whole idea and the whole purpose of the goal is to get the person, uh, the social media users to just click that story, even if you don't get to read the story, the whole goal is to get you to click on it. generate that. So you could see that on that note, it's more of an economical reason to circulate it just so that we can generate traffic rate. So it exists for different reasons. Um, not not from the questions that were sent to me. One is talking about, well, to make it clear, I'm not speaking for government, I'm not speaking for any government organization. I'm not any PA to anybody, so I'm just talking as a professional. Then the second one, uh, someone is saying the only thing that makes this so much concern about this regime. Well, not necessarily. The truth is that, like I said, there are interests, right? There are interests, and it's not true that every time government says anything, it is not true, or that anytime anybody is making any allegation about government, then the person is always correct. No, that's not the case. I believe that there are times that genuine concerns are dismissed. I agree with that. There are times that genuine concerns are dismissed just because there is no will to address it and to, either investigate or do justice to the issue. I agree that there is such a time, but it doesn't also mean that uh, anytime anybody comes up with anything to go at them and then the person has the right. No, it's not always true. Sometimes certain allegations or certain things are said, I would say, with no disrespect to anybody, but sometimes I spend out of it. Truly, sometimes we understand how government functions, how the process is work. We will not be so yes. So there are times that certain issues are not cleared for whatever reason. I don't know, but it also doesn't mean that when anytime anybody says anything about them and then the person is depressed, or if the person is framing up things or just trying to say things when the person is depressed. There are two sides to the point. To one direction. Uh, I'm not going to, you know, you know, all right. So, like I was saying, I'm not going to hold this for anybody, but the blame comes from the side. It's not just one side. As much as there are times when we don't find, uh, we don't see transparency, but also there are times that citizens or Nigerians just come up with things to pursue their own personal agenda, whether political, political, or uh, personal.
Thank you very much for that. And just before you take the last question that we have, I just want to mention that it is very important that when we see a news item on social media, especially, because there's a lot of sensationalism, it is important that we actually read the article to be sure that whatever is the content actually aligns with the headline before we start to share. Because a lot of times what happens is that, like you mentioned, clickbait, so it sounds really, really interesting and we just share, we just click share. And then when you read it, when you read the main article, it has absolutely nothing or a totally different connotation from what the headline shows. So let us be very sensitive about that, be sure of what we are sharing, um, but also ask questions. Take a few seconds to ask some questions before we share. So back to Mr. Ayuba, there's one last question here from Ugonna before we end the Q&A session. He wants to know the website you mentioned where we can verify picture authenticity. Could you please tell us what it is again? And if possible, type it into the chat box so that everybody gets that. But please tell us what it is. Thank you.
The website, the website that you could go to verify. So you could, I would put it up on the app. to bring all the sites that are being take you right from the first time to immediately to how share the how share the
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Yuba is going to put that on the chat link so that everybody gets to see it. We would now continue with a walkthrough of the Glassroom Misinformation Edition. But before we end, I just wanted to very quickly let us know who we have been listening to. We've been listening to Mr. Ayuba Elia. For those of us who weren't here during the introductions, Mr. Elia is a communication expert and broadcast journalist. He studied mass communications at the University of Maiduguri, where he has enhanced his communication skills in effective communication, corporate imaging, and representation. He's a multimedia expert who has generated content in both traditional and new media platforms, including the Nigeria Customs Broadcasting Network, StarTimes, Viewer Television, Nigeria Central Television, TSTV, Daily Trust, ASO Radio, Business Post Media, Niger Magazine Online, PRTVC, just amongst others. With years of experience as a broadcast journalist covering international and local beats, he has served as producer, anchor, and copy editor. So clearly, you can see that we could not have had a better facilitator for this part of the workshop. Thank you very much, Mr. Yuba. And we will now proceed to the walkthrough of the Glassroom Misinformation Edition. Thank you. And if there are still any questions, could we please put them in the chat and we would still be able to respond to those. Welcome to the Glassroom Misinformation. In this exhibition for young people and adults, you can explore how social media and the web have changed the way we read information and how we react to it. You'll find out about the new types of influencers, the new and old tactics they use, and the role we, the users and consumers, play within the data. There's also our free data demonstration, which reveals how to tell facts from fiction and why it benefits everyone around us when we take a little more care about what we share. The two questions to ask ourselves here would be, what information do we see and what do we miss? How do we know if a picture or a tweet is genuine or truthful? And what can we do if we can't be sure? At the end of this walk through the virtual exhibition, we will be posting the links to the exhibition for you to enjoy at your leisure. The Misinformation Edition is built around three core teams. Core team number one is deepfakes. Deepfakes are technologies that are available now which allow you to digitally generate completely artificial video footage of just about anything you see around you, especially people. So, you can feed a deepfake application or software with footage of a particular person and a photo. Then it will generate a footage to show that person, merging it with other things. This way, it is possible to create completely artificial depictions of people, which are impossible for the human eye to tell. The first poster in this exhibition is Deep Future. This poster explores what deepfake technology actually means for us. What does it mean for how we see ourselves, how we present ourselves in the future? What does it mean for our identity? But also, what does it mean for how we want other people to see us? How are we as a society going to react to that? The fact is that any kind of information we see in the digital sphere could actually be completely artificially generated. Now, what does this actually mean for us? This poster shows us how our speech, body movement, facial expressions, memory, personality, etc., can be manipulated in deepfakes. Next here is Deepfake Lab. This app was developed by students from Density Design in Milan, Italy. It shows step by step the ways in which a deepfake is produced. It also shows how the technology works and how to identify a deepfake. Welcome to our website. My name is Arthur, and we are going to have a look at deepfakes. Deepfakes are artificial intelligent computer models that are able to recognize facial features to be able to either replace faces or be able to manipulate them. Throughout this website, we're going to have a look at the variables that determine the quality of a good deepfake and how to recognize them. Disclaimer: most of the content on this webpage has been artificially manipulated. Enjoy. Some people dream of success, while you're going to wake up and work hard at it. Nothing is impossible. You should get to the point where anyone else would quit, and you're not going to stop there. No, what are you waiting for? Do it! Good. I got that too. Misinformation.
Come on for the balloon. Hello.
What is misinformation? It is false information that is spread regardless of the intent to mislead. In this exhibition, we would be looking at double check. Double check is an app that specifically focuses on image manipulation, that is, airbrushing or photoshopping. The ways in which photos are changed and presented out of context to give a completely different message, often for deceitful reasons. Let's play. And so you can continue to play this game in your own time. The next in the exhibition under the misinformation is the more you look at fake news, it becomes more difficult to determine what it is and what is meant when we say the term fake news. This app, Fake or Real, is a series of different questions which look at social media posts, news stories, political adverts, and then asks people to decide if what they're looking at is fake or real. Are you ready to play? The final part of the misinformation theme in this exhibition is a drop in the ocean. A drop in the ocean was developed by colleagues from D&P Varun based on the psychometric ocean test. Ocean test is used by psychologists who, through a series of questions, give a psychological profile based around five characteristics: openness, conscientiousness, extroversions, agreeableness, and neuroticism. This type of test was used by Cambridge Analytica on the data collected on millions of people around the world, profiling them, and used in political campaigning, targeting ads during the US election in 2016, but also before that during the Brexit campaigns and in the Nigerian elections of 2015. You can take the anonymous test to see how you would be profiled and what sort of ads you would be served based on your most dominant character traits. How could your personality profile influence the ads you see? We're just going to randomly answer this question to see what sort of ads we would be served. And if we wanted to try out the questions for adults, how could your personality profile influence the political ads you are served? Let us compare ourselves to people aged 20 to 29. You can try this out and see what it gives you. Back to the main exhibition. We're going to be looking at the final core theme of habit forming behaviors. How websites and our computers and phones are designed to keep us hooked. The first exhibition here is titled Hooked. Hooked is from a Chinese designer from Density Design. It's an eye-catching visualization which shows a series of different photorealistic eyes which are showing a group of Chinese netizens' screen time usage. The central part of the eye, the pupil, shows the amount of time spent on their mobile devices, and the outer part, the iris, shows what type of apps are being used. Are you hooked? This is a really interesting poster, and I hope you take the time to enjoy it at your own pace. Next in this series is the poster, Are You Hooked? This is an interactive poster where you can add your own usage anonymously. You can download the poster, print it at home, and get your friends involved. your own usage, you would need to activate your screen time function. The poster has instructions for iOS and Android users. You'll be able to capture your average screen time and specific screen time. The next poster, the next poster here is titled How Your Phone is Designed to Grab Your Attention. Should we be blaming ourselves for not being able to put down our phones? The full poster can be viewed online. It looks at different design tricks, sometimes called dark patterns, that make it more difficult to put our phones down. Again, we will be sharing the links to the exhibition at the end of this walkthrough. Let's watch the videos. Living with algorithms, personal data, political persuasion, serious profiling, and trachography. For more of the videos that are part of this exhibition, please watch it online. You can also go to the data detox bar at your own pace. The Classroom Misinformation Edition is available in a number of languages, including English, German, French, Spanish, Italian, Swedish, Danish, Lithuanian, Slovenian, Dutch, Ukrainian, Russian, and Armenian. It is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Non-Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can share, copy and redistribute this material in any medium or format, but you must give appropriate credit, provide a link to the license, and indicate if changes were made. The Classroom Misinformation Edition is possible thanks to the European Commission with the following project partners. Several artists and initiatives also participated, design teams, all listed in the exhibition. Thank you for being a part of this exhibition. Please share your feedback as part of the visitor survey. The survey is anonymous and just requests for very basic information. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very
Now let's
much.
get back to the rest of the program.
Thank you very much for staying with us through that walkthrough. If you look in the chat, you would see the link to the actual exhibition, so you can take your time. It's very interesting. There are interactive games, there are posters, a lot to work through, a lot to do, and you can also do it with your friends, with your colleagues. It's all very, very interesting. The link to the Glassroom Misinformation Edition is www.theglassroom.org/misinformation/exhibition. It's there in the link. I just want to, before we take the last Q&A session with Mr. Ayuba, I just want to very quickly mention that on Thursday, we'll be hosting another event as part of this series. Now, Thursday's event will speak more to public health. If you noticed from the workshop with the facilitator, this event spoke to governance, which is why he talked to us about fake news, about ethno-religious polarization, about disunity, and the lack of transparency in information sharing. Thursday's event will speak to public health. It will speak to the issues around the COVID-19 pandemic and treatments, also to means of reducing the spread. We would also go through the data detox kit, which we were not able to do in this event. The video from this week, the video from this event will be shared on Vilsquare's website, as well as more information and the registration link for Thursday's event. And the website is www.vilsquare.org/misinformation. Vilsquare.org/misinformation to catch up on all the recordings. Thank you again for coming back to join us. Let me give Mr. Ayuba the floor to say a few things before we close. Mr. Ayuba, over to you, please.
Well, thank you once again for the opportunity to speak. While we're making the presentation, I observed someone asking a question on the comment section, on the chat section, which I want to attempt to answer that question. The person is asking whether or not there are policies on ground to check how misinformation spreads. Well, the truth is that I believe that there are ways of checking these things. However, about a year or two ago, I would say since from 2015, there has been this debate about social media bill that the National Assembly is trying to come up with, and that has generated a lot of controversy. While some people think that, well, it's fine for us to have the social media bill, others are concerned, especially civil society organizations and other persons are concerned that this could lead to the gagging of the press and kind of not allowing free expression, free speech, and all of that. So that conversation has been on ground. Even recently we saw the NSAS protests and how social media played a very great role in galvanizing or mobilizing people for that protest. And then so there are concerns about I would say mistrust between citizens and lawmakers and the government. It is seen as an attempt to try to muzzle people, not to allow for free speech and to control the press, what the press does, and limiting the ability of the press to be able to scrutinize government operations and the rest of that. Now, while that is on one hand, there are other lawyers also who said that, well, there is no need for more laws as far as use of information is concerned. Now, I would say that first we have regulatory agencies that exist already in Nigeria that I believe, if made efficient, they can be able to serve these functions. For instance, I can give you an example with the Nigerian Press Council and the Nigerian NBC, Nigerian Broadcasting Commission. Now, these are government agencies that are saddled with responsibilities of ensuring that media personnel adhere to the principles of practice of journalism, at all times. So these regulatory organizations are there. And then also, as far as laws are concerned, we also have some laws, that also is supposed to check, the spread of misleading information. For instance, we have the Defamation Act. We also have the seditious law, and then we also have the principles of practice of journalism that are meant to guide journalists in that light. One, as part of principles and Principles, yeah, I'll just leave it at principles that are meant to regulate the activities of journalists. We have, objectivity, fairness, accuracy, balance, in reportage and in the spread of information. So it is expected that journalists would adhere to these things, as a way to regulate the spread of information. Nigeria, good enough, we're not in an authoritarian kind of system where the press is, bullied, for spreading information. It is a kind of environment where the press is expected to self-censor itself. It is expected that the media will self-censor, what they do, and so they should be guided by the ethics of the profession, which is to always ensure balance, accuracy, fairness in information sharing, and that factuality is also very, very important in the spread of information. However, if in the case where journalists do not adhere to these principles, the Press Council and the NBC are supposed to hold media organizations and journalists responsible. And also, the laws that I mentioned, are also expected to be used to check, those who are spreading misinformation. So, for instance, under Defamation Act, you have laws guiding libel and you have laws guiding slander. If you say anything that is injurious to anybody's reputation, if the person decides to sue you to court, then you will have to defend yourself. Either if you have evidence for whatever claim that you are making, then fine. But if you don't, then you should be ready to face whatever sanction will come with that act. So it's not really a question of whether we have policies or not, but it's about whether the people that are supposed to be doing what the people that are meant to enforce, are doing what they are expected to do. And, being that there's a whole conversation about press freedom is something that is very sensitive, and that people and, even government needs to be careful with the way it treats the issues, because there is a very thin line in between guarding the press and, trying to regulate the unprofessional practices that we see in some quarters. So I think that's the much I can say. We have policies, I think, enough that can regulate these things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayuba. I believe we have come to the end of today's program. I want to thank everyone for joining in, and thank you for staying with us through the break in transmission. We really appreciate your presence. If there are any other questions, we have a question from Tosin. Tosin, we're going to let Mr. Ayuba answer this, and then we would post this probably as part of the report, because we know that you all need to get back to work. It's a Monday afternoon. So Mr. Ayuba is going to answer, and then we'll send it to everybody, not as part of this program and the recorded event. But just to say that Justin wants to know how we establish balance between the pros and cons of data tracking, ethical codes of conduct, or policies that regulate or restrict data collection by global organizations. This is really interesting, and it's also a big part of what the Glassroom Community Edition responds to. And we've been able to host such programs in the past in Nigeria, across Nigeria, actually. So thank you very much, everybody. And the recording will be up, like I mentioned. And we look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thank you and good afternoon.